everyone, and welcome to Thorough Newspaper Analysis, which is brought to you by LawSikho. So these are the articles that we will be discussing today. Firstly, in blockchain voting, leave out the general election. So this is from the Hindu and basically talks about the recent discussion that has been taken up for making the entire system of voting, casting vote, through the technology of blockchain. So what actually it is and what are the pros and cons attached to it, we'll be discussing in this article. Secondly, redefining a farmer. So basically the definition of farmer, the author says that the definition must be overhauled and should be redefined in order to reach out or to give the maximum benefit of government policies for farmers. And thirdly, Maratha quota, which is from the Indian Express, which talks about the recent debate that has taken place regarding the Maratha quota or the quota for Marathis in Maharashtra. And finally, we have the news and flash column. Before that, let's have a look at the LawSikho courses that we have for you. So we would like to show you the lot of the courses that we have. Judiciary test prep course. The link to this course is there in the description box. You can have a look at it and download free study material for yourself as well if you are preparing for judicial services. Then we have various other courses also. They can be seen at the LawSikho official page. Let's see that what is the multiple choice question for the day. World Suicide Prevention Day is observed on 9th September, 10th September, 12th September or 15th September. So if you know the answer, do jot it down in the comment section below. So this is the descriptive question for the day. Not unless the definition of farmer is widened and changed, the various government policies for farmer benefit would not be able to reap the maximum benefit. Discuss. So once we are done with today's article regarding the redefining of farmer definition, you will definitely be able to answer this question. So the answer must be written within a word limit of 250 to maximum 300 words. With this, let's start our discussion for the first article for the day, which talks about blockchain technology or simply blockchain in elections in India. Basically, just the last week, the Election Commission held an online conference in collaboration with the Tamil Nadu e-governance agency and IIT Madras, wherein this entire discussion regarding bringing in this blockchain technology into the election system in India was discussed. So therein, they explored the possibility of using blockchain technology for the remote elections. Now here, two things are important for us to understand. Firstly, what do we at all mean by the blockchain technology and how can it be a relevant one for getting into bringing into our ambit the remote elections as well as the remote population of India as well. Firstly, to understand this entire thing, let's understand that what do we actually mean by remote elections. Basically, what happens is that when any kind of election take place in the country, there are a lot of people who live or they are available at that particular time in such areas where election booths or reaching out to election facilities is not very feasible, and thus they are left out of their right to vote. Also, many times what happens is that the migrant workers, now as we have seen enough about the migrant workers since the time COVID-19 has hit India as well, and these migrant workers, for example, have their voter ID of state of Uttarakhand, but for better living standards and their job purposes, they were living in Delhi. So once any kind of election is proclaimed in Uttarakhand, they must travel back to their home state to cast a vote. Just imagine now, a laborer who is at 150 to 200 rupees per day only, will he be able to afford and leave his job for 2 or 3 days and travel back to his home state to actually cast a vote? More feasibly not. So that is why through this blockchain technology, we are trying to bring in these people or the migrant workers or those people who are at a distance and cannot really cast their vote and cannot use their right to vote. Now let's see that what actually do we mean by blockchain technology. Basically, blockchain technology is a distributed ledger. We'll just see as to what do we mean by ledger as well. So it means a distributed ledger of information, which means a ledger is simply like a technological or digital book, which is there in some kind of digital system. For example, if you're storing any particular kind of information at any one place in your computer, laptop, desktop, or whatever you are using, so that particular area, that particular so-called digital book is known as ledger. So just like we have some information, or even if you're writing the notes to this news analysis today, so that particular thing, that copy or notebook, wherever you are writing those things, is a form of physical ledger. And the similar notebooks kind of things or compilations are there in the information or the technological systems as well, which we call as ledger. I hope this is clear with this. Now we'll just move forward further. So it simply means a distributed ledger, which means a distributed digital notebook or a book of information replicated across various nodes on a peer-to-peer network to ensure integrity and verifiability of data stored. So basically, just like this, we can see one data is moving from this laptop to the another one, then it moves to different nodes, and then it moves to other places and gets verified as well. So this is how we get one-on-one and or peer-to-peer data collection takes place, and it becomes endowed with more of integrity, and it becomes more verifiable. Thus, this is the entire system of having a blockchain technology. Just as the name also is suggesting, it actually is like many blocks, just like this. Many blocks are actually accumulated in such a manner that they form a long chain of these blocks, and this is a whole new system or new information database that is collected. So it started from one, and then it multiplied to further levels, and it entirely became the new block is added to the blockchain after every new step, and thus a transaction is possible and it becomes complete. So basically, this blockchain technology is used in supporting structures for cryptocurrencies. Now we all know the most famous cryptocurrency of Bitcoin, so it is mostly used in that as well. Now they're also used in non-cryptocurrency applications such as drafting of smart contracts. So many times for technological uses and for other things as well, smart contracts are drafted, and blockchain technology plays a very crucial role in it. So this is important for both the things, for prelims as well as mains, because a very potential question regarding blockchain technology may come into prelims as well, whereas bringing or adding it with some other ambit or even as itself, it can also be asked in the mains part as well. So we must be prepared with it. And let's see that what are the arguments in favor and against of the use of blockchain in elections. Now, basically, we have understood what do we actually mean by blockchain and how slowly entire chain of blocks is formed and information is collected. Let's understand as to what are the pros and cons of having this technology in the election process in India as well. So the points in favor of having a blockchain technology are, firstly, that it would benefit the internal migrants and seasonal workers. Please keep in mind, internal migrants are those that are migrating within the territory of India itself, that is from one state to another. Purposely, it does not really refer to the international migrants or the Indian nationals that are staying in some other country or other nation for that matter. All right. So the argument that is in the favor of having a blockchain technology in election system is firstly that it would be now possible for the internal migrants and seasonal workers, like we just discussed, to cast their vote through even at being at a distance as well. And as per the census of 2011, which was a population census, 51 million people of the entire population of India are internal migrants or seasonal workers who actually cannot stay into their own home states. And secondly, it says that it is useful for remotely stationed members of the Indian Armed Forces, because many a times also the posting areas or the postings of the Indian Armed Forces personnel is in such places where, leave apart the election processes, there is not even electricity or not even some potable water to drink. So in such areas also, or which are so remotely stationed, even the members of the Indian Army would be benefited. But then the arguments that are against it are manifold, and actually they are way overpowering than the arguments in favor of it. So firstly, it says that it will have heavy dependence on the proper implementation of cryptographic protocol. Now, this is a very, very big reason to be concerned about, because when we talk about the cryptographic protocol, it actually needs proper and specific functioning. If in case there is any kind of loophole left, there are a lot of, to say, exigencies that are attached to it. And a very good example in the article itself is given that in Russia, very recently, the president of Russia, who's Vladimir Putin, he used the similar technology to get a vote regarding something casted by the people of Russia. So the citizens could cast their votes electronically, that is through digitally, but then it was brought to light that due to one small issue that was going on, the identity of all the voters could be easily revealed, and they could all be, you would know that who actually has voted for what particular thing, and even the complete identity of the voters could be taken out. This definitely is against the right to privacy of all the individuals. It is really very detrimental and even harmful for their life at times, because any adverse situation could also arise, because obviously there would be some people who would be happy with the kinds of votes casted, and some would not be happy. So there might be a chance that they would try to attack those people who actually voted against them. So this is something really, something very important to be addressed if at all we think of bringing in this technology to India. Then secondly, vulnerable to cyber attacks, but obviously because very recently even the question about our electronic voting machines, which were the EVMs, had also risen up, that even they were hacked, and through some cyber attacks, they were actually, the votes were not casted impartially, and there was some kind of biasness and sort of things. So obviously, if we are moving completely to a technological area, so then there is a high chance of having cyber attacks and also denial of service attacks. Thirdly, risk of unmasking the identity and choice of the voters, as we just discussed in the first point. Fourthly, a very possible chance of cloning and misuse of the biometric data. Now, as and whenever we are discussing about the data, especially the personal data, and obviously once you are connecting your biometrics to any kind of voting system, giving away highly personal data to the stakeholders, to the other custodians. Now, there is a high chance of that data being cloned and misused by any hacker for that matter. And fifthly, challenges to make this technology available to everyone. Now, as we know that there is a huge scenario of digital divide that exists between the rural and urban areas of our country. The rural areas, though various endeavors have been taken, but yet they stay so much devoid of these technologies. And if at all we want to bring in the entire population that can actually vote to bring under one umbrella, how will we be able to actually make this particular technology available in the remotest of areas, in the villages, in the areas that are actually tribal, or the ones that we are trying to include? It's very difficult for us, at least in the current scenario. Then there are some other solutions which actually, instead of this, and they're more according to the author, they're more in a better situation to be brought in as a solution. Firstly, introducing and improving other methods such as postal ballots or proxy votings, which have actually, it has been discussed a lot about this as well, that at least for people who are physically challenged, or who are at their old age, or due to some other restraints, they cannot actually come to the main voting booth. So for them, postal ballots can also be arranged. And creation of one nation, one voter ID. So just like we have the one nation, one ration card scheme, wherein a ration card issued from any of the states can be used in any other state, like it will be just like an Aadhaar card thing, wherein you can use an Aadhaar card in any part of the country. Similarly, they say that for one nation, one voter ID as well, just make it, instead of making it state-wise, we should make it more of a whole national ID card as well. But then at the end, the author says that if at all you want to bring this for small and local elections, this scheme is fine. But if you want to bring into the wholesome of general elections, then it might not be that feasible. So also it says that any solution must be software independent and fault tolerable, obviously, because we need to make sure that we are, whenever we are bringing some technology, we also have the set solutions to actually deal with the problems that would come due to this technology. And then failure or tampering should not affect the integrity or transparency of the process. With this, let's start with the second article for the day, which talks about definition of farmer. Basically, amidst the pandemic, all of us know that the agricultural sector saw many immediate and strategic reliefs under Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, as we know that agriculture has been, fortunately, one of those sections of our society and our economic setup that has been least affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And in fact, various government schemes as well as good rains this time has added to the quality of and even the quantity of the agricultural produce. Also, in this light, to make India Atmanirbhar, we have, as in the government has brought in various initiatives in the agricultural sector as well, which are really beneficial. But then again, there is a discrepancy here. That actually is, who are we considering as farmer under the definition of farmer under these government schemes, and actually to whom are we able to give out the entire benefit? Basically, the author, let's understand that what is the motto or the key argument here. Basically, the author says that the schemes which have been brought for the farmers are really good, and they actually have a lot of potential to make the situation quite better. But then the author says that the definition of farmer that has been used according to these schemes is actually very narrow, whereas the farmer, as defined under various other areas or various other statutes, it is a very wide definition. But when we talk about the actual benefit being given to the farmers, that definition of farmer is really very narrow. How? Let's see. It says that the 59th herein, just give us a second. Yeah. So here, let's see that what is the land ownership and farmers. So one relief was the direct cash transfer, which was under the PM Kisan scheme, which is Pradhan Mantri Kisan scheme. So which mandated ownership of cultivable land records for being eligible. So basically, it says that wherein these schemes are concerned. So whenever they're trying to identify as to who are the farmers, according to us, to whom we will be directing these schemes and the benefits of these schemes. So according to the PM Kisan scheme, it says that anyone who has the ownership of cultivable land would be considered to be as called as a farmer, and only he will be eligible for getting any kind of benefits under the PM Kisan scheme. Then, traditionally, land ownership is a mandatory criterion for availing benefits under agricultural schemes. So, if we talk traditionally about most of the schemes, agricultural schemes, the farmer schemes that are running in India currently as well, the most important eligibility criteria for a person to gain the benefits of these policies is to have ownership of the cultivable land records for being eligible. Now, just by simple and basic understanding, just try to understand as to how many farmers in India do actually have complete ownership of the land on which they are working. Of course, there are a lot of farmers who actually work on lease purpose, and here they actually do not have their own land on which they have ownership. But yes, they work on somebody else's land on lease. What about them? So currently, as per the definition which is there under various government schemes, these farmers who actually are working under lease or some other things other than the ownership of the cultivable land are just not eligible for gaining any kinds of benefits under the PM Kisan or any other schemes. So this is very ironical, because in finality, we wanted the benefits to reach to the farmers, right? But we have narrowed this concept so much that we are actually giving these benefits to the farmers who actually have ownership, and we have totally overlooked the farmers that actually are working on the fields, are using the cultivable land, but still they do not own it. Let's see that what are the basic definitions which are available for the farmers. So according to the population census, cultivators is defined as a person engaged in cultivation of land either owned or held in kind or share. So please keep in mind that all these definitions that we are going to study now will actually have both the clauses, that either that person or the cultivator has ownership over that land, or even if he is holding any kind of share in it or through any kind of share. Then according to the 59th round of the situation assessment survey, it says that the also stressed on possession of land either through ownership or leases or possessed for defining farmers. So here again, the farmer or the possession of land is defined either it could be through ownership or even through possession or lease as well. Here it says that it can be redefined to define a farmer who earns a majority of income from the farming. So actually, ideally, the situation would be that even if a farmer who is earning the majority of his income through any kind of farming activity, he should also be considered to be a farmer, irrespective of the fact whether he is doing it on his own land or on somebody else's land. But yes, if it depends majorly on the farm produce, then he also should be called as a farmer, which in current scenario is not the case. Please keep in mind. Then again, according to the 70th round of the situation assessment survey, it removed land as a defining criterion for a farmer. And see, now actually, according to the definition, we have removed the criteria or eligibility criteria for having ownership of the land. And agricultural households were defined as those receiving some value of produce from agricultural activities during previous 365 years. So here we can understand that the actual definition of farmer that has been defined gives a very broad, to say, meaning to farmer, whether he owns the land, whether he has possession of the land, he has taken a lease of that land, or even if he's relying on that or the produce of that cultivable land, or even if he is getting some value from the agricultural activity. Then again, according to the national policy for farmers, it said that it included everyone engaged in the agriculture and allied activities while defining a farmer. So this is really very controversial, because at one place where we define farmer to be in such a broad such a broad meaning, then when it when the decision comes to give the actual benefit to these transfers, what we actually do, we narrow down the entire situation, we narrow down the entire definition, and thus the benefit reaches out only to a few farmers that the state or this act actually, or the policies consider them to be the farmers. Thus it should be widened enough, it should be broadened, so that the major people, the major farmers who are in need should be addressed. Also, there is a small fact that according to the NCRB data, most of the farmers who actually committed suicide due to the lack of funds or the huge debts that they had to pay were mostly the landless farmers. That means the ones who actually were working on somebody else's farm or somebody else's field and did not actually have ownership of their own land. This actually gives a clearer idea as to these were the actual farmers for whom these benefit schemes should have been worked for. But on the contrary, the owner actually is getting the benefit, and the people or the farmers who are working on his field are getting nothing, and they have to be at the mercy of the land owner. With this, let's discuss the last article for the day, which talks about the Maratha quota. So the Supreme Court referred to a constitutional bench whether states can exceed the 50% quota as set by the Indira Sahni versus Union of India case 1992. So as a general rule, it is an idea that the states cannot really exceed 50% quota for reservation. So let's see that what was the Bombay High Court ruling regarding the Maratha reservation. So it held that the limit of reservation should not exceed 50% except in exceptional and extraordinary circumstances. So yes, there is some kind of leeway provided, but that is for very exceptional situations only. Then subject to availability of quantifiable and contemporaneous data. So the court relied on the finding of 11-member board. So let's see that what is the existing situation of reservation in Maharashtra. So basically it is 2% exceeding to the 50% allowed quota, which is 52% after the Maratha quota of 64 to 65%. So let's see that who actually are the Marathas and why is this debate actually arising. So they are very politically dominant community of Maharashtra, and 32% of state's population is of Marathas. And then they had 11 out of 19 CMs so far belong to this community. So in a way, if we see, they're like quite privileged. They're politically dominant. They are good at economic situations as well. Socially, they are very powerful. So ideally, having reservation for them is not really desired by many. So actually, they're also playing a very important role in the rural community. Then, according to the Maharashtra State Reservation for Socially and Educationally Backward Classes Act, reservation is provided to the Marathas as well, and that is why arguments have been raised as to even after having such influential position in the society have yet been provided with reservation, which actually has been brought into question. So let's see what the court has for us later. With this, let's discuss the final point, which is the news in flash. So firstly, National Security Clause. So the Union Cabinet has added a national security clause in the new policy, raising the FDI, which is the foreign direct investment cap, from 49% to 74%. So now, as we know, that we are actually focusing a lot on bringing in more and more FDI to India. So this is a good step in that regard. So with the new clause, the FDI in defense sector shall be subject to scrutiny on ground of national security. So that is the main thing, that even if any FDI is being brought to India in the defense sector, then it will be very much subject to the scrutiny under the National Security Clause, and the Government of India reserves the right to review any FDI in defense. Secondly, hike in poll campaign expenditure. The Election Commission has proposed a 10% increase in the campaign expenditure limit for all future elections, given the constraints posed by COVID-19. So basically, we already know that just yesterday we discussed that in India, the elections are actually something that they attract a lot of money, and they need a lot of money for a successful campaign. And yet, keeping in mind the COVID-19 thing, another 10% decrease in the expenditure for this campaigning has been provided. Then 10th September is observed as the World Suicide Prevention Day. So it is observed to raise the awareness about the topic of suicide and talk about ways to prevent it. So according to the World Health Organization, we lose about 8 lakh people to suicide every year. So this is a very huge number, and definitely we should take care of this, and mental health is very, very important too. Then lastly, World Wildlife Population. As per the Worldwide Fund, Living Planet Report 2020, wildlife population has reduced by 68% between 1970 and 2016. So just approximately between 5 decades only, 68% of the wildlife population has been reduced. Then 75% of Earth's ice-free land surface have been altered. 85% of the wetlands have been lost. So this is a very, very major loss that has occurred to the ecology and environment. And we, being responsible citizens, should definitely make efforts to reboost or to put efforts into boosting the population of the biodiversity. So you can have a look at all of these. Largest wildlife population loss has taken place in Latin America, and for India, we have lost 6 plant species and nearly 1/3 of its natural wetlands to urbanization. So yes, this was all for today. We hope it was a good session for you. Stay tuned with LawSikho for such more sessions to come. Thank you so much.